This is Politics at the Bar, sponsored by Angry Cactus, featuring Tim Condon and mayoral candidate Tom Thompson. Well,
We're good.
Thanks, Tom, for coming by. I was typing late at night, and I was thinking politics at the bar, and I thought, what a great idea. No one on Facebook thought it was a good idea, so it started inspiring me to figure it out.
So there's still a lot of people that are questionable whether this is a good idea or not. And I'm like, no, it's not. We had come in here after a forum that was downtown,
Yeah.
and you came in and visited with us and like, hey, what about this? And my wife, my campaign finance manager were like, oh, I think that'd be cool if you did that. And I was like, let's do it. So we hadn't heard until the other day, and I'm like, are we going to do that? Let's play. Let's go.
Well, I mean, for me, politics is always kind of an interest, whether it be local, state, federal, right? But like, I'm always a big believer in the one that affects your life the most is usually the local races.
Hands down. And so a lot of people said, why do you want to be there? I said, if you want to make a difference with your group of people and your friends, you want to do it in local municipal politics. You make a decision, it will help people tomorrow. I mean, you're out to do things. The people that do state and federal politics, I mean, there's some long-term, I mean, you're in it for the long run, and you may be, I would say, majoritied out to getting anything done. So I see people have disappointment with that. Typical city things, you always get to provide input. We have a phone. We answer it when they call. And if you call, go, hey, how about this? I got a call today. The guy didn't understand his tax sheet. He just got his appraisal for 25.
Yeah.
And he didn't understand it. He's 82 years old in my district. And so I was kind of walking him through it. And I was going, here is the part I know, but don't be ashamed. That's one of the hardest things to understand. Do you understand yours?
I mean, I hate taxes. I hate them with a passion. So insurance is the same way. But I have to buckle up every now and then and get my microscope out and look at them.
Right.
But I absolutely hate just the whole idea and concept. But I mean, that's the libertarian in me, right?
That's the libertarian in you. So I like to point out my argument. So do you think you should drive down the streets for free? I mean, should there be, and that's a big argument with taxes with like nonprofits.
Yeah.
People say there's lots of nonprofits and they don't pay basic infrastructure tax. I mean, they don't pay anything, but they do use all of that. So a lot of that is you get your revenue off their sales tax, that what they do spend. So there's different parts and different theories and opinions on taxes, none of which I would ever claim to be an expert, but I have learned a lot over 8 years. Every year you learn about it, you get educated on it. That's one of the cool things about municipal politics. Finance and city and staff will sit down and go, okay, here's this. And trust me, there's somebody in there that's an expert on it.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot.
Well, I mean, like taxes is one of those things where even though you hate it as a business owner, it's something you're somewhat obligated to understand.
Absolutely.
And so, it
helps, especially when you have to send in your tax at the end of the month. I mean, your sales tax.
Well, and then that's kind of where my brain starts sparking, because the more I get educated about it, the more my political opinions change.
Right.
Based on this or that. And so it's like one of those things. It's like, oh, I hate dealing with taxes, but we all have to figure it out. And obviously the streets have to be there. The fire department has to be there.
No,
the police
but this
department
goes back, to the Romans. I mean, this goes back hundreds and thousands of years. And you look at people that became disciples, but they were tax people. You're like going, holy smokes. I mean, and they were hated then. I mean, it was something that's hard, but taxes, government and taxes, two things are going to be there in death. I mean, three things you're going to see.
So you've been in city politics for a long time now. You've been on city council for what, two?
I went on two
cycles?
terms.
Two terms, okay.
So I term out at the end of in May. So I term out. So I could either run for mayor or I'm done.
Yeah, and you were mayor pro tem as well, right?
I was mayor pro tem for 2 years. So a lot of people don't understand what that is, but should Brenda not been able to been there for something or other? During that 2-year term, I was responsible for having all the background information, being able to take over and go, okay, run the meeting. And it happened once, and it was real funny. I was walking in, and Dana goes, you're on. I'm like, what do you mean I'm on? He goes, well, Brenda's not here. She's sick. You're on. And I was like, oh, when? Like in 30 seconds. I'm like, okay. It was fun. That wasn't the day that changed me. All right. I said, I need to run for mayor. But you have to ask questions. All right. You have to ask why and why not. And there's a lot of difference of sitting as a mayor versus sitting as a council person.
Yeah.
And you know what, as the executive here, there's a lot of difference between picking out and lining out the menu versus flipping the steak or stirring the shrimp.
Yeah.
It's a whole different opinion. So it was fun. I loved it.
Well, so before city council, were you on any local boards? I mean, I know you were we knew each other even before, I think, city council, but you were always involved in the community in some way, shape, or form.
So I worked for the rodeo. I worked for the rodeo for 10 years, and every nonprofit, we engaged with them in somehow. So I had to work and help and develop with them. You know, we're trying to promote your nonprofit. When other nonprofits called, you worked with them to grow it. I was on the CVB board for a while, which was the first introduction into it. But, you know, I was on, my kids were 4-H. I was, you know, a 20-something years Methodist. You get on every staff parish relationship committee. I mean, every finance committee, all of these things. A board is a board. Their staff, a lot of people don't understand how the mayor position or city council works. Staff does all the preparation, all the background work. It comes to you, and you're, as the mayor, you're chairman of a board.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to vote that up or vote that down. Plus, you also roll forward. You have initiatives. All right, folks, here's some hot buttons. So, like campaigning this time around, I've campaigned. This is my third time to campaign. First time was unopposed. Second time I ran against two young ladies who were awesome. And I put one of those on a board, and then the other one declined it. And she had her own reason for doing that. And I learned that you have to put people in there. And coming around this time, I've got two worthy opponents. All right. Yeah. People that have these things, and they're going forward with no council experience at all. And I don't know if I would have done that. All right. I'm not saying, I'm just saying I learned so much over 7 years. And every time I think I understand, I learn I don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's a critical thing that I know city staff. Well, I've been dealing with them for 8 years. I want to say that when the time comes, the learning curve is short. I mean, I know my initiatives. I don't have to go meet everybody. I can pick up the phone and call and go, hey, this was a hot button during the election. We've talked about this. We haven't solved it. It's time to get after it.
Yeah.
It's time to fix it.
So obviously, you know, like you're running around, campaigning up, at this point in time, right? Talking to everyone. What do you say the biggest local issue is? What's the biggest hot button issue currently? Like, I think that are coming up at all the debates. And what is the big thing? I mean, is it the bonds?
So
what's like the number one thing?
Bonds is big. I mean, but that's a discussion point. But there are things people bring up because they know they can incite some, I would say, lack of confidence in the system. And then there's things that are important to me that I know are strategic. Like I'm all about water. Okay. I think the number one thing.
I've heard you talk about that a lot.
Oh, I love it when I get a water question because I can go for 15 minutes just on how precious and how hard we have to work to protect it.
Yeah.
And how we need to get to 2070. We need to get 2080 and you always want to be able to turn it on.
Well, when were we talking as a city about running out of water and we had like 12 months left? That was only 10 years, less than 10 years ago? Oh,
yeah, it was less than 10 years ago. And that's one of the most brilliant moves I ever saw Dwayne Morrison and that council. I would love to take credit for it. They went down there and bought the Ford Ranch and they got the Hickory Aquifer. Not because we didn't have it, but everybody else could dip a straw into it. Mm. So they went in there and bought it. They used James King, one of the best, I should say, real estate gurus in the nation. He's Bezos' real estate agent. Went down there and got to closing, and closing actually happened after the rest of us came in. So we were all kind of on pins and needles that day going, did we get it signed? And we did. But what that did, and that was kind of revenue bond, what financed it. But to finance that, you have to have revenue against it. But the sale of the property actually went to some people I knew from Big Spring, and they have ranches and they bought the property, but we were able to take the water rights and say those belong to San Angelo, Texas.
Yeah.
And then we've drilled multiple wells down there. It's up to it'll bring in about 12 million gallons.
You can't have a town without water. I mean, no. Ask Boston or ask some of these other cities that are growing.
So there's a battle. So there's a battle down there, Tim, and they want our water. That I-35, I-45 corridor, they are at wit's end, and they're trying to put legislation in that would give Austin regulatory governance over our water, over the entire state. And so you have to support Drew Darby and people that are down there going, you fight for our region and our district and keep us free and independent of them.
Yeah. I think the water fight's a good neutral fight I think everyone can support, because I mean,
Oh yeah.
most of us understand the importance of water, and if you don't, you're probably living under a rock.
Well, it is, but we have built a good cluster. So we have two non-adjacent water supplies. That's Ivy and the Hickory, but we also have a reclamation through the Concho River project. And the goal is to get to net zero. It can process when it's up full strength. It will be able to process about 12 billion gallons a day, where you put treated water into the river, and several other cities do this. Naturally, it will filter it, and you come back and put it in, and you get to a net zero consumption. That's awesome.
Well, since you're on the water topic, we're going to go into fairyland for a minute, because
Okay, let's go.
This
Let's
is
go
a
to fairyland.
conversation I wasn't anticipating having with you. I was going to have it with one of the other candidates,
Right.
but
No.
we're on the water subject, so I'm really kind of curious. So I've had this fantasy. I'm going to have a moment for a second and just kind of give you my fantasy. But I came to this realization.
Can I also get a Diet Coke? That's even better. That's even better. Diet Pepsi.
I'm good, thank you. So I was sitting around one day just having these 30,000 foot thoughts, you know. Yeah, exactly. And I had this idea, and now I have no idea if it's feasible, but whether it's feasible or not,
let me take some notes.
You know, that's a whole nother issue. But
right.
I always had this thing, and I hear Gary Jenkins talk about it often. Is he literally said, and which I love big thinkers because I'm totally one, but he said, like, let's get San Angelo kind of to that Las Vegas state. Now, of course, that's a big jump, but like the whole idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The whole idea of creating and utilizing the river and maximizing that asset, I guess you would call it, right, is a big thing. Now, what that looks like is totally different from person to person, but I've always had this idea where over down by the Bell Street Dam, you can somehow suck the water there, pump it up to where Central is, and just to circulate the North Concho. The South Concho comes in pretty natural.
Right.
And it would, and of course you'd have to deal with 2 level changes. But it'd be a great tubing river or a great
if you could get enough
current going, but it would. I mean, it would probably take away some acre feet of water. I don't know what I don't know what the Colorado Water Authorities or whoever is responsible.
But I mean, that's a thought of maximizing the potential of the river.
Yeah.
So let's take the river stage. All right, there's some investment in it that's going to come, and it's going to be trying to make it. But San Antonio, look at San Antonio, lives and dies off the river. It's a tourist attraction. So if you could maximize it, that would be really cool. I don't know if you could recirculate enough of that water that goes down, because people downstream have water rights, and you have to let X amount of water downstream.
Yeah.
And there's a water master that decides that. And so the amount of water and what you can do with it is highly regulated.
Yeah, yeah.
And like in Colorado, and when you get up into Utah and Montana, I mean, you can't even throw something in the river and dam it to block off to irrigate your cattle. I mean, you have to have that. It's getting that way in Texas.
I mean, California is probably the worst state when it comes to all the fun, because they've got multiple levels of authority to go through.
But I mean, but those are farmers who are like, okay, I've got some friends that farm almonds out there, and they're like, we have to beg to get our water, and we have to fight for it.
Yeah.
There's battles here in Angelo too on diversion points. I have helped, and I'll say in other districts other than mine, on diversion points in water, whose water rights secede or precede everybody else's.
Yeah.
Who actually has a diversion point for it? Golf courses here, that's huge. Like, we have to have water, and if we can't get this, does my diversion point allow me to pull before the city pulls or before I get somebody else? So, could we make a water park? I mean, we would have to really, you'd have to validate that as that's something feasible. Then you'd have to get, like you said, I don't know how many approvals from TCEQ, the state, to do that. And it'd probably be hard to do that if people downstream don't have water.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm supposed to get X number of acre feet.
I'm just planting the seed right now that we're going to have a floating river one day.
Right. So I'm going to drink that here in a minute, but it's while we're talking, I'm going to drink this.
So okay, good. To go back to a very big topic, which I was kind of passing on earlier because it's a boring topic, but I'm actually very curious. The whole conversation dealing with property taxes. So, like you said, most people don't understand, and you asked the question earlier.
Don't be ashamed of that. I mean, ask questions of everybody. I mean, call people up and say, I need help here. So I was probably that way too when I first started looking at it. I'm going, well, I pay this. I was afraid to go protest my taxes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and
Well, I
don't
think
be afraid to go.
everyone needs to know on that whole subject is every year you should go protest your taxes. I do. I if I see a rate that hike that I don't feel is necessary,
Right.
you know, because it's not like your property goes up $100,000 in a year, and those computer systems are kind of just, you know, I think there's, you know, software that are kind of just, they're not people making
Right.
these decisions.
You're exactly right. They're not people. So the humanity sometimes gets taken out of that.
Yeah.
But I have talked to Tyler Johnson out there, is very good returning phone calls going, here's the answer to your question. This answers that. Cindy Hurt, friend of mine for a long time, works at the appraisal district. I always send people to Cindy. I hope she doesn't get me for this, but she does a good job taking care of people, helping them understand. So let's say your property taxes, you've got basically your county, your city, and your school property tax rates.
So, all right, so you pay $1,000 just as a round number, right?
Okay.
So you pay $1,000 in property taxes,
right?
What 7 or 84 cents of that, or 84% of that is going to
So
the
I'm
school.
not going to nod yes, but the school has their percentage, the county has theirs,
and the city has theirs.
And the city has. So I know the city is 0.7554.
Yeah.
Right? And they've kept it at that, or they kept it at 776 or below since I came on in 2017.
Yeah.
And I think it was in front of that. They were like, we live within our means. Let's budget within our means. And I will tell you this, Brenda we are not raising taxes. Or there's been lots of things that go, but it's like we keep our tax rate the same. The amount you pay may differ, but that's because of the appraisal of your property.
Well, I think what a lot of people are frustrated with is they don't understand the correlation, I guess you would say, between the tax rate and the value of their property going up,
Absolutely.
right? So, like, just because the tax rate stays the same, if the property evaluation goes up, then your taxes are going to go up as a net,
Absolutely,
right? So in theory,
I call that inflation.
Yeah.
I call that inflation.
Inflation,
that
right?
Inflation.
But I guess
now cities are capped at 3.5%. They can't go over that and gain any except on new property.
Who has the authority of making the rates for the appraisal district? Is that the appraisal board?
That's the appraisal district, and they have a board that handles protest. They have people that are hired, executive directors. I don't know if you call them the president of that board,
but I guess
they go through a review process.
Who actually creates the formula for like what of something is worth? They're basing, acreage, say an acre is worth X, Y, and Z. Who regulates that, or who makes the decision on what that value is?
The appraisal district has people that go around and appraise that, and I'd say they give the city an estimate every year and say, this is how much we think we're going to bring in income. This is the property value. They have to take out all the exemptions. So everybody that's 65 or older, they have to take out school, county, city exemptions. One thing that's cool about Angela, a lot of people don't realize, if you're 65 or older, you have a homestead, your tax dollars are frozen. All right. So let's say you're paying $1,000 and you're 65 years of age. Regardless of what they appraise your property at, you're always frozen at that $1,000 on city taxes until you get rid of your property or you make an improvement, which is cool. We've had to fight a little bit to keep that. We're one of the few cities in few cities in Texas that does that. And people are like going, well, how come other cities will say, so you lock that in, you also lock in the dollar amount? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those people are on a budget, and I think that was done even before. I don't know if Dwayne Morrison and them were doing it, but they locked it in for the city and said, we're locking in your dollar amount.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
I mean, it always sucks to see a bigger bill, but there is inflation. I mean, I think a lot of people are frustrated with it. It seems to be curving way higher than inflation. Inflation's what, at like 6% right now, maybe a little bit less.
Oh, it's been more than that. I mean, interest rates are bad.
7, maybe at the highest though. I don't think. I mean, I haven't looked at the numbers, but it seems everyone's worried about taxes, and that kind of goes to a whole nother topic. Is like, all right, so what is the actual problem here? Is it a lack of revenue, or do you think it's that we're needing these increases? And of course, inflation is obviously a big part, right? But is it the values aren't properly there, and we're trying to make up the difference on the values?
For a long time, we were probably way undervalued. I'm talking before I even came into office.
I've heard that a lot.
Right. A lot of people said there weren't any adjustments, and they loved it for several years.
Yeah.
And then a new set of management or new management came in and said, you are so far behind the rest of the state, you're handcuffing yourself on what revenue you can do. So it's kind of the canary in the coal mine or whatever. You've got to put it out there. And what they do is they say, here's the dollar amount of taxable property. Here's your exemptions. This is how much money the city is most likely going to get. But that's an estimate. So we take that and spread all of that out and go, okay, we have to work within, that's your purse. That's your bank account. You have to stay within that part.
Yeah.
Your property taxes bring in about $48 million. All right. Here's where I'll go with that.
$48 million in the city?
In the city. The public safety budget for fire department and police department is $58 million. So your property tax is basically 20% short of covering just public safety. So I tell people, you hear it all the time. Well, I pay taxes for this, that, and the other. In my opinion, you pay taxes to cover 80% of public safety. The rest of it comes through sales tax, enterprise fees, things like that come forward. That's how you have to make up the remaining $50 million. I mean, you have to do that. Sales tax, we're taking $11 million out of sales tax to cover public safety, but you can't ever sacrifice public safety.
Well, I think most people are okay with consumption style taxes, like venue taxes, consumption sales tax, because you're consuming the product. But like when you're dealing with somebody on a set income, and you've got a homestead or you've got a house that, you and then inflation goes up. It doesn't necessarily mean your income's going up when you're on a set budget like that.
So we're going back into economics and things. The consumption-based tax would probably be the most fair, but where you see that is like taxes on fuels, on gas and diesel. So you'll see, I think it's 44 cents on diesel and maybe 34, whatever it is on gas. But those are consumption-based, and I think those are very fair. The more you drive, the more taxes you pay.
Yeah.
And that pays your state highway funds. It would be cool. The more you eat, and sales tax are kind of consumption based.
Yeah.
The more you buy and pay,
the more you buy, the more
you eat, the more you go do that, do those things. Those things are consumption based. You're going to put more taxes back into it. But that's how you get revenue from. I don't know how many people here eating tonight are probably from Wall, outside of city limits.
Yeah.
Their revenue, their contribution to using the roads and the highways and everything in town is basically sales tax.
Well, that goes back to the whole kind of like, all right, so you got a tax shortage, right? And how do you solve the tax shortage? And you're looking for, obviously bonds are potentially there.
So let's talk about different types of bonds, but let's go and talk about street bonds.
Okay.
All right. So
street bonds for infrastructure.
Absolutely, for infrastructure. So San Angelo has the highest credit rating you can get of a municipality. Moody's, Standard & Poor's, all of them. San Angelo is ranked as good as you can get, which helps us in areas like people look and evaluate your insurance things. So safety, the financial stability of your city makes, okay, your city's stable. You're not going to have a situation problem. So as you look at that, San Angelo's in great position with that. But we looked at the number one thing when I was coming in 2017 was streets. We just went through Snowgood, all right, and the streets were torn up, infrastructure was dying. They're like, we have to focus on that. And that was the message. So we did every other year, $20 million bond. We spent nearly $120 million on streets in the past 7 years. In fact, the last bond, we were in such good shape. We actually, I think we'll check this with Tina Diersky, but we actually did $30 million the last bond. Look at all the streets we've changed. College Hills, Bell Street.
Yeah, I don't think the streets are that bad anymore. I mean, I did live off of Bell Street, and it was pretty bad.
Dude,
Bell Street was bad.
I lived up Bell Street. That was at the end of my street. I heard it from everybody. Hey, Thompson, I had to go put new shocks. I had to put new ball joints on my truck.
Yeah.
I got that. I mean, I felt it.
I used to have that big cheeseburger place up the street. I couldn't even drive it down Bell Street. It was so bad.
So, I mean, I drive MLK. I love MLK. It was smooth and it was done. And MLK shifted a lot of traffic off of Chadburn.
Okay.
But Chadburn now is nice. Gosh, it's nice. And they did all of Chadburn because of new technology. They did all of Chadburn in a month.
Yeah.
Between the stock show and the rodeo last year. I got more phone calls and Facebook. It was what idiots at the city and, who did this and who was going to decide to tear up the road between the stock show in February and the rodeo in April. They did it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, y'all, I'm not saying I told you so, but they said they could pull it off, and they did. I was kind of skeptical too, but they did an awesome job.
I mean, the streets are getting better, I would say, just anecdotally, right? Like, I mean, even though people are still kind of cranky about the streets, I think you're always going to have that. Just like you're always going to have pet people kind of, in the background having problems. But the curiosity for me, going back to the bond subject, is all right. So you got your street bonds, right? And then you've got two other bonds that are on the voting, on the ballot. Now, obviously you're running for mayor. So, before, when you get elected, the bond is already a settled issue. But I'm backing up a little bit, and I'm going to like a 30,000 foot view again. I like to be in the clouds sometimes on my thought processes. So, all right. So you've got the Coliseum over here, and what is the value of that bond? It's like
41.6.
41.6. Right. And then you've got the school, and that's like 200. What?
No, it's right at 400. I don't know, 497 or 400, something like this. Let's just call it 400.
So you got the big bond for the school, and then you've got the smaller bond for the Coliseum. Right. Okay, and so what a lot of people ask me is, like, what are your thoughts? What are my thoughts? Right. I don't necessarily know. I kind of, when I have those kind of questions about, those are kind of political issues, I go kind of default to my basic political beliefs, and that's for social issues. I'm much more liberal on economic issues. I'm much more conservative, and then I'm definitely a libertarian on the going from up to down. I'm not an authoritarian at all. Much more of a libertarian. So when I think about these things, being an economic conservative, I think, all right, the Rodeo Association and the rodeo, we're voting on this smaller bond, and that brings 78 million of economic revenue.
That's the grounds,
right?
That's the entire grounds. But I mean, they started. Yes, you're absolutely
right. Like a major economic chunk.
Right.
Well, I mean, even here, right? We see it downtown. You see it.
During the
everywhere.
I've tried to come here and eat during the Stockstone Rodeo, and you can't.
So that's an example of investing money. That the more we invest, the return is going to happen more and more.
So that's not money to the rodeo, but that's
to the Coliseum. Impact. To the Coliseum.
I mean, but it's money
to the
facility.
City. To the facility.
Right. But it's money in restaurants. It's money in fuel. It's money in groceries. It's hotels. I mean, it's really good. So with this started, I want to say this, and I don't know if they'll change their mind, but I mean, Monday night there was a forum. I said right at the front of it, I made my statement about God, family, and country, and I love San Angelo. But I said, I'm 100% in favor of both bonds.
Yeah.
All right. They are economic impact. I think I was the only candidate for mayor that would literally say that. Nobody else wanted to.
Yeah.
And I got home and my wife's like, that may cost you votes. I said, but it's what I am. It's who I am.
Yeah.
You can't show a lack of spine. I mean, as a mayor, you're going to have to make hard decisions, and you're going to have to make decisions for the best thing for San Angelo in the long run. All right. So to me, I will stand up and say, when companies look at coming to San Angelo, economic development, they're coming and taking a tour. And Steve at the chamber taught me on this, and he said, most important things they say, do you have water? Right, we have a good balanced water supply. We've got reclamation, aquifer, and surface. Yeah. So that's a good balance.
So number one, right?
Yeah, number one, you got your water. Number two, they're going to ask, how's your housing? And I think we've got a lack of the housing price point from, say, $250 to $350. And I've heard this from several different banks. Chris Evan at First Financial is one that says, I have a lot of people that are approved in this area, and what they can afford doesn't fit what they want for that money. We need some houses. So my pitch to the Realtor Association and the home builders was, whatever you're doing, do more.
Yeah.
All right. And they came back and then endorsed me. And I'm like, hey, that's great, but this is a team effort. We all need to do more. So if you can answer the fact of housing, you have availability, you have people that'll come in. So water, housing. The third question they ask, how are your schools?
Yeah.
All of the spouses of everybody we're bringing is going to know how your schools are.
What is the word on the street as far as the performance goes? What's the anecdotal? What's the word out there on San Angelo ISD? Are people?
So my wife's a teacher.
Yeah.
So I will say from the inside, there's plus and minuses all the way. I mean, everybody that's employee is always going to have something they like and something they don't. If you're a great, awesome teacher, you're there for the kids. Yeah. I mean, my wife went and got a master's in education. I think she spent $15,000, and she gets a $500 stipend per year. I'm the math.
They're all underpaid and all that. Yeah, I mean, we can all agree on that.
So they did a bond last time, So remember that there was a bond before this season, and the rodeo could have brought a bond then, but they stayed off of that.
Well, I think you and I agree on the rodeo bond, and I can tell you why. Is I believe if you have that bond, you update the facilities. You know, you're going to have a much higher. You're just going to have a better quality experience. That brings in money. That's money that is consumed and brought by sales tax.
But I think the rodeo has not got to market that the way they wanted to, the association, because they said we'll market it. It's the city's bond.
Yeah.
But actually the rodeo's already put in about $1.5 million.
Yeah.
Engineering. They've already risked $1.5 million.
Well, and I was on civic events for way too long.
Right.
Advisory board. And so we knew kind of the issues with the Coliseum and how old it is. And so
from
on
the
and
city
so forth,
standpoint,
right?
they would love for somebody to take the Coliseum.
Yeah.
It only nets like $60,000 a year
Yeah,
after everything you do. It's not a moneymaker. That's why most Coliseums you see are run by a county.
Yeah.
All right, but that wouldn't work several years ago. And so the rodeo said, we'll invest in it. We'll also be on the hook for any cost overrun.
Yeah.
Anything over the 41.6, we'll pay for it. And we're like, really? Yeah, we'll pay for it. So
that and the bathrooms, you know, that's a good selling point. When I saw that on the Jumbotron or whatever we call it up there.
That when the lady won fan of the night and they wanted to get her and they're like, hey, where were you? And she's like, I was in the bathroom. I was waiting in line for the bathroom. And so I think people have overcomplicated both bonds.
Yeah.
It's just a home to live in. I mean, you can't do better with it if you don't have a greater facility. And the rodeo bond, Seth has a great bond calculator. This is where I'll pitch my website at tomformayor.org. I've got a bond calculator on there. It's not exactly 100% accurate, but you can plug in your home value and you can plug in either or both and look with an exemption without, and it'll tell you pretty accurately what your cost is going to be. But the rodeo bond is less than the cost of dinner tonight for me and you. That's a year. I mean, for me, it's minimal. I think if my home was valued at $300,000, it's $8 a month. All right, it's for that. It's $100 a year.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I just need to cut off half those subscriptions on my phone that I don't pay any attention to. That one's covered.
Well, I think for me,
what do you think? Do you agree with that? I mean, is that reasoning?
Well, so
yeah, I mean,
it doesn't seem like a lot of money, right? But I don't think it's the amount of money that people are concerned about. I mean, I have conversations with. I love politics, and so I get into the weeds on politics.
We
all the
do.
time.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're drinking beer and having political conversations, because it's a great thing. What everyone says you can't do, which I don't agree with.
We're between two ferns, between two cats. We're good.
But like for me,
so just so you know, I can go to 10 o'clock. I got to be at work tomorrow, but this is it.
So like on the bond situation, especially like on the schools, like I couldn't get behind the bond for the Coliseum simply because the better quality experience, just like in any service industry, the better quality of the experience, whether it be going to a rodeo performance, whether it be going to a concert, whether it be going to whatever show is happening at the Coliseum, it's going to be a better experience.
Dude,
with better
it'll
facilities.
Be a plug and play. It'll be, you know, they will take it over once the construction's over. The association will now run the Coliseum.
Yeah.
It's all about entertainment. It's about concerts. It's about filling it up and rolling with it.
Yeah.
It's going to cost them nearly $800,000 a year just to do the maintenance on it. That was a projection.
Yeah.
And so you have to ask them, are you ready to do that? And so I have to go on to one thing. When we were talking about it and putting it up on council, somebody tagged me and said some things, or me making a comment of saying one of the main reasons I ever got on council was because I'm in District 2 and the rodeo's in District 2. But you're going to double the seat capacity from 5,000 to 10,000.
Yeah.
You have all these skyboxes and all these suites, like 52 of them. So what you do is you take all the sponsors and you move them out of 40% of the seats or whatever they have. You move them up top. You just increased your sellable seat revenue.
Well, and a lot of people complain that the locals can't get the tickets because all the sponsors.
I agree.
I don't think I've paid for a rodeo ticket for years because it's always somebody like that's sponsoring, that all the business relationships and so on and so forth. So it's not really
there
something
for 10 years. I bet I get over 120 texts and phone calls. Hey, can you get me tickets for this guy? And somebody made a comment. I bet Tom can get tickets. Well, I pay for my season tickets. And I have, even when I was employed for the Stockton Rodeo. I wrote a check for him. But people call me and go, hey, I got a box seat of 4. I'm not going to go, usually on the matinees. Hey, Do you want to go? Because I got a guy that'll sell you some tickets, face value,
Yeah.
and you try to get everybody to it. The one I love, Raymond Mesa, always wanted to have this Kahano rodeo. And unfortunately, Raymond passed away before we got to the first one. Last year and this year, you should see the people that come to that.
And that's the last Sunday
That's
or last
the last
performance,
Sunday.
right?
People that have never been to a rodeo before. There's a lot of there's a lot of ambiance. There's a lot of pageantry. There's a lot of
Color.
history, color, culture with that. And you look at the people and you look at the little kids and you're just like, you want to go, you know what, this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
And some people can say, oh, you know, I kind of got painted as sinister for helping promote the bond and saying I'm for the rodeo bond. That's like, if you think I'm sinister for helping my district and the largest thing, I'm sorry, I painted that picture. This is about making people, giving them entertainment for less than they would spend on 2 extra performances.
Well, I think I'm convinced that the rodeo, or I mean that the Coliseum bond is worth it. Where I kind of question
the
myself,
juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah, no, I agree, and mainly because of the model, because you put money in, you get money out, more money out, and so that's very appealing to me.
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of people have questions is the whole school bond. Now it's much larger, of course,
right?
And I don't want to get you in trouble because I know your wife's a teacher, but I don't want to talk about San Angelo ISD. I want to talk about first. I just want to get your political thoughts on not necessarily San Angelo ISD, but the public school system in general at a much higher level, right? So no, I'm just because this has nothing to do with local politics,
right?
But I've always had I've always had this really hard dilemma in my head.
Okay.
Like the school system is a socialist model, right? You would agree that it's somewhat of a socialist model. If you could make it
equal for everyone and that would be a socialist model.
Well, and what I mean by socialist model, I mean that it's got X amount of dollars coming in because of the taxes it collects,
right?
And it's not necessarily performance based. You might challenge me on that because you know your wife would probably tell us a whole nother story of how it is performance based, but in general terms, it's not. So what I'm going to ask you is, where am I wrong? So like when it comes to,
and I don't know if I'm smart enough to answer that. All right, I may not have the skill set.
When it comes to giving more and more money to the schools, I guess let me kind of bring it back down a level.
Right.
So when you give more and more money to the schools, and they're not necessarily, the perception is potentially, the people who are against the bond, I guess would say, they would argue. No matter how much money you give to the school, they don't spend it wisely because it's not necessarily incentive based. It's not performance based. And the reason why I feel that might be true is because I had a lot of conversation about the whole school voucher system. Right now, of course, there's a lot of differing opinions on whether it's good. And I had Greg Abbott here, and then we had all the Drew Darby people protesting because Drew and Greg Abbott disagreed on
different
this,
absolutely
different sides. So I was really curious because I got down the rabbit hole on this. That this one really interests me because it's not necessarily a local issue. It's a bigger picture of issue of the structure and the system. And what I thought, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, based on what you think. But when you are opposing school choice, and I'm not, of course, this has nothing to do with mayor, so we're just talking politics.
But you know what?
But when
this shows where I stand.
Yeah.
All right. And everybody should have to answer this question instead of going, oh, well, that'll be decided before I get there. No, you're going to have hard decisions as a mayor. You need to say your voice right.
Yeah. Well, and my whole thing is I don't know about the school voucher. I don't know about the school bond for me as a voter yet, simply because I think the structure is wrong. When you have the schools opposing school choice, it's almost opposing a capitalist model, I guess you would say in quotes, because you're going to get more money for better performance, because if you become the higher performing school, everyone's going to want to take their money with the student and go to that school, and it's going to give the disadvantage. Now, I get the nuance of that because certain, like maybe special needs programs might not be good in one school or the other, and so like you're going to get challenged with demographic issues and things of that nature. But a lot of people are concerned if you just keep giving money to the school, and they don't really have an incentive to spend it properly and healthily, because a lot of academics and people that run school systems, they're not necessarily entrepreneurs. They've been in the academic world for a lot of their life, and so people in that system think completely different than like capitalists like me say,
So it's the same thing about a college professor. I mean, you hear people criticize college professors go, well, if you couldn't survive in business, then you would just go be a professor. You get a doctorate and go be a professor. I agreed with some of that. Some of the time I didn't. And it was usually some people look at it and go, no, that's the sharpest tack in the box. And we're thankful enough they came here and taught. So from this standpoint, I'll say, number one, you can't pay teachers what they're worth.
I
mean, those
everyone agrees.
Everybody agrees. They're worth 90 to 100,000 a year. They'll never get there. All right. But they do it out of the goodness of their heart. Here's what it is. And you know what? Any corporation, any entity is never going to be 100% clean. All right. So there's going to be waste. There's going to be things you don't see. People call. We air freighted a part in for the city, and the city guy wanted it tomorrow, and we paid $300 in overnight freighting, and it got here, and he didn't pick it up. Well, it didn't make it in time for us to use it, so we had to go different. But yes, was that waste? I'm sure it was. If you look at the school bond, we could have done this. How many years ago did they try to run another bond, and it was almost half this? If they would have done that one then, this one might not even have to be here. So I think of it, in my opinion, we're just trying to build them a home and a house. And I've gone to two of Dr. Moran's presentations, and I've gone to two of Merle Brandon's. And they take a lot of heat, all right? But it's almost like we can't even put the kids in the room right here. We can't. That's why we do cafeteria and shifts. Dr. Moran's got a heart on him that was like, his heart was like, I have safety concerns. And you know what? We don't think about it till it does go wrong. You know what? He was absolutely right. You have to let Central out in waves because you can't feed them all. You've got issues at Glenn. They go through that whole presentation of, when I look at it, I'm like going, it's just trying to build a home for these kids to be in. And somebody voted for it. I remember when I bought my first house, and like 2 years into it, I went, who jacked my house payment up? $60, $70 in that. And somebody said, well, that was Carol Ann Bonds. And that was her. And they were kind of critical about that. But I have two kids that went through SISD. One of them's got his bachelor's and master's at ASU, and he's got a nice job, stayed here in town. Got a nice job at H&S Services. My youngest son, Creed, is in his second year at the Air Force Academy. But they're all products of SAISD. So I got to say the system's got some good evidence that it did some really great things. I mean, you look at some great ones. Is it going to be perfect?
I think school's what you put into it, right? I was a horrible student, but somehow I can run a business fine.
You're supposed to fix my kid when it comes to school. I'm like, school's not here for the discipline of your children. If your children want to learn and they want to grow, and you see that, the best ones, the cream always rises to the top. When that top 10 comes through and their averages are like from 101 to 110, and you're like going, how can you have a GPA greater than 100? My wife's like, well, that's all the special classes and that's the advanced. I'm like, holy smokes, those kids are going to be brilliant. They came through. I was not that, okay? My grades were, I was a B student at ASU.
You're better than me. I was a D plus student.
They were like, we're going to have to paint this a little bit just to get you through. I was a sheep shearer. I sheared sheep and paid my college education. But if you work hard and you put into it, B's and C's end up running companies. They do things. I had a wonderful job in the pharma industry for basically 30 years. I've got to go from coast to coast, and I got friends all over. And it was cool to work for a Fortune 250 company and be able to make things. So let's take it back to the bond. And, my point is, nobody understood vouchers better than Drew. All right, I think Stormy had her opinion, and Stormy was from Kahoma.
I can see both sides, honestly, because I can see in the rural areas where you don't have like a bunch of public schools to choose from, where it would be a disadvantage. Especially say you're in like Erie County or somewhere, where, I mean, it would wreck those school districts. I totally get that, especially in the rural areas.
Oh, absolutely.
If you go to a DFW or something, I can see where school choice would open up opportunity and make schools compete with each other. So I get both sides. I understand why Drew was against it, but I think just as a bigger picture idea, that's where my mind is like, well, if they don't want competition, then that kind of proves that it's kind of this like, but I don't know if I'm wrong. I'm just throwing my opinion at the moment. But those things change all the time.
Do you know who Bobby Jindal is? He was I believe he was the governor of Louisiana.
Okay.
He totally reformed education in Louisiana. And I heard him on something one night, and he was just you can listen to people talk. You just know they're brilliant.
Yeah.
And he was one of those guys. And I was like, so he actually put out a book. Maybe I saw him on Fox or CNN, something or other. And he had a book out. I got it. And he made competition in Louisiana. And he made that education system better. Later,
competition makes everything better. I think he was even
a presidential candidate. Competition's great.
Yeah.
I mean, a question the other night was, Shannon's the only one here. Would you support another hospital? Competition's great.
Yeah.
I have tons of friends at Shannon. All right. I go to Shannon. I have no problem with it. It's great if you're well. They've had growing pains. They're trying to grow up to a standard and meet a standard and capacity to where they can serve everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're going to have to tolerate that. If somebody wants to come with another hospital, they have a process. They do a resolution with the city. Hey, here's where we go. Would you welcome another hospital? We would.
That's one that bothers me too, is the lack of that. The whole concept of monopoly in healthcare is just like, oh my God. That's just one of the worst situations we're in right now.
Well, so that one, so you can throw Shannon in there on that one.
I mean, even Abilene has a problem with
Hendrick. I mean, but so let's talk American Airlines at the airport.
Yeah.
So American works off a hub and spoke system.
Yeah, yeah.
I have gone several times. I'm flying my son in and out of Abilene. Second week of May, I'm flying in and out of Abilene because the price of the airline ticket is $600 cheaper.
Yeah.
And so I can't do that to my company. I mean, I got to go to Salt Lake and back. So I'm running to Abilene, and it was from like $1,300 down to $600.
Yeah, I'm just looking up tickets
driving
today.
An hour. Yeah.
So yeah, I was looking at just the price of leaving out of San Angelo to go to Chicago versus Dallas.
Did you look at Abilene?
Well, no, I didn't. But now that you mentioned that, I should probably look it up.
It's still American, but they sell seats based on capacity and seat load. The fewer seats, the more the price. It's like a hotel.
Yeah.
The more rooms that are sold, it's based on scarcity. It's pure economic.
Yeah.
You know, and so I have talked to the airport manager, Justin Fletcher, and I'm like, we need to talk to American and see if, at least on Fridays and Mondays, if we can get one more flight in here. He's like, well, that's great. You go be elected or whoever, regardless. And I told him, regardless of who the mayor is, you need to talk to American Eagle and say, it's nothing they can solve without bringing in one or two more flights.
My biggest pet peeve of all time, airport related. You ready for this?
Hit me.
I have that flight that comes out at 10:30 from Dallas. I've probably had that flight on my flight, probably 15 to 20 times. 15 to 20. No. Okay, I'm lying. 12 times out of the 15 to 20.
Say 15 to 20.
That damn flight has been canceled. What is going on with the late flight coming in from Dallas? Every single time it's canceled. There's not a time when it's not.
I have some institutional knowledge. So I got to fly over the country. I have 2 million miles in and out of this airport, all on American Eagle. All right. So I was always Advantage Executive Platinum. All right. So I knew when to fly. I knew when to book. I would never fly in here on the last flight.
Yeah.
Because especially on a Friday.
Well, I've learned that lesson.
All your pilots are maxing out on their time. They can only have so many flight hours a week. They only get so much time. And I have listened to them argue. Dispatch is saying, hey, Tim, I need you to take this flight to Angelo and overnight in Angelo and come back tomorrow morning at 2 because the next flight in the morning is a crew that's already there. And I've watched them scream and throw fits. I can't do it. I don't have enough hours left. It's people. So we got United Express in here at SkyWest for a little while. I forget, coming in out of Houston. And we lost it. The city gave them $1 million and said it, but they also have to give the same fairness to American Eagle. I don't know how that.
Well, there's not a lot of traffic, honestly, that goes out of there. I mean, there is a significant
Houston,
amount,
but I've seen it 3 times, and never has one of those ever survived. What we need is to be on a leg on a direct route. Somebody says, Southwest. I'm in El Paso, I'm in Midland, and I'm at Love. We need to be on one of those legs for a route that either goes to the north or goes to the west. To make one of those, it wouldn't even be profitable. I mean, you can't even bring someone. I watched those flights go to Houston with like 3 or 4 people on them, and I'm going, a little 172 would spend $400.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And if you took one of those CRJs and run it at 22,000 feet at 460 knots, you've got 10, 12 grand just in fuel.
Yeah.
So it's. But I'm with you. That last flight, I will do everything in the world not to bank on that last flight. I bet I've driven from Dallas, Fort Worth to here over 100 times. Yeah. And there was a crew of us coming in, and we knew we were with Ethicon, we were Time Clock Plus, all of us travel buddies. We might not have known their names or we'd wave, but it'd be like, Yeah, hey, the flight just got canceled. No, they've delayed it. So I'm like, okay, I'll get a rental car. All of you three go get all of our luggage. Here's my luggage tags. I'll pull up front in 30 minutes, and we're going to
There's
go
nothing
home.
more disappointing than sitting in that airport. But
It's brutal. So let's go back to the school bond. Let's go
Okay,
back.
yeah.
I mean, we're talking in a circle. We're going full
they
circle.
call that the weave, is what Joe Hyde calls it, the weave.
And you know what? And Joe does. I did an interview with him yesterday, and wonderful time. I love debating. That's what I like about y'all. Here's what it is. There's no evil intent, but let's have a conversation. If we don't agree, we don't agree.
Yeah,
It's not a stab you over this thing. So
that school bond,
that school bond, as we lead back to it, there's a cost to it, but it's. And I have seen people gripe about the cost of one facility. I heard that. Well, the cost of this facility is double what the square footage costs. I'm like, oh my gosh, that facility was built years ago, probably bid out in 2017, 18, 19.
Yeah.
Of course it's going to cost more. I mean, once they get the bond, then they'll start bidding out prices again. Same thing, the rodeo hasn't looked at any of that beyond, let's get the bond approved. Then if the bond approves, we'll start our purchasing process. We'll start all the permitting and the fees. You don't start that until you get the approval. It'd be an entirely inefficient waste of time and money. Same thing with the school. School's going, here's what it takes to get us there safely. We want to cross this bridge. It's about putting a roof over their head.
Yeah.
It's about having a heater or an air conditioner.
No, I'm with you.
It's about being able to have a play and go, oh, we love our play, but we don't even compete on the same side stage, and we can't have a contest here.
Well, so your argument for supporting the school bond is specifically economic development related. Bringing, and other reasons, because there's reasons to spend the money, but
you are absolutely right.
And that's one of the priorities. Water, you got your economic development to bring in, and the cost of living.
If you pass this opportunity up, I would hate for the next mayor to have to look at somebody and say, we're not friendly to schools.
Yeah.
The town is not bond-friendly investment in school. It would make me cry. These things are so important. They need to go regardless of who is going to be in office and on council. These are more important than that. This is long-term.
Yeah. Well, so when companies are coming in, and they're looking, hey, we want to locate our headquarters here or whatever, right? Just a basic economic deal. And then the mics get to work on it and figure out all that stuff, right?
Yeah. So turn the mics loose. I mean, that's out of my wheelhouse. That's out of my knowledge.
Yeah.
If you want to come here and want somebody to talk, you send them to economic development. You don't, hey, well, come by and swing in my office and let's have a chat. There's no transparency. There's no discussion there. They go to the mics. They are pros at what they do.
And so both mics, they hear, oh, hey, you don't have a good school system in our people, or you don't have a good educated workforce, or you don't have, economic development of any kind, whether it be, even an interstate is economic development if you boil it down, right? So there's all these ways to get people here to San Angelo. As a restaurant, we always figure out a way to get people here.
Oh, and you've been very successful with it.
But I guess if economic development is working to bring all these people in, what about the businesses that are here that are wanting to expand? And I'll give a small anecdote. I had some issues a long time ago with, we won't talk about who or anything, but it was Costa DC, right?
Right.
And there was this whole issue with how does the money get spent? Who gets to make those decisions? And of course, Costa DC is the economic development portion of, and I think it's funded through sales tax. Is that right?
Well, there's different parts. That's so far down a rabbit hole between Cornerstone and Costa DC and economic development. There's several pieces to that pie, but let's just say it gets funded.
Yeah, it gets funded through the city and through some state funds, I think, as well. I don't know how many federal funds, but there's a big perception of out there that only certain amount of people control certain amounts of things. The word is the good old boy system, right?
I love it.
I wasn't trying to go there yet. I still had more topics.
So let's say that, but let's go. But
me personally, as I was wanting to do some business here, and I just felt like me as a business owner was not treated the right way.
Right.
Nothing against Mike and Mike, because that wasn't them, but it was more Costa DC. But even other business owners, a lot of them complain about the permits department, right? That's probably the big one that you hear about. Everyone says it's an anti-business kind of environment.
Right.
Now, I guess I'm just kind of trying to hit the corners here and we can dive in closer. But
so let's stick with local business first.
Okay.
All right. Keeping local business.
Meaning
business retention.
CDC.
Brett.
Yeah. And local.
Yeah, we have Brett programs, retention programs for Talking Texas. All right, for the Aramo. There's people that say, I want to do something like this. I don't know if I have the funds to do this. I could go somewhere else or do something different, or with some assistance, I can work here. That's a Brett program. I mean, you literally send them down to the mics and go, they would funnel through and they would qualify. And those are typically not huge investments, but if somebody needs $150,000 for a piece of equipment that will help them be more efficient and grow, and in return, they're going to sell more and provide more sales tax to you. Why do you not support? So there's Brett programs. There's lots of things.
There's lots of programs, right? But I guess,
but where you're going, and what I want to say is, do we always get treated fairly? I mean, the gorilla in the room is, did I get treated fairly with my request versus others?
Yeah.
If I'm Tim Con, well, you have been a little controversial in your life.
Not me.
No. And there's people watching. They're going to go, oh, they said it, but they did. But you put a board and a group together to evaluate that. And the single most important thing for them to be is fair. All right. You might have had your opinion from. I remember when you didn't want to roll your cheeseburger.
It was fully mobile, by the way.
You're right.
It was a trailer.
But you didn't want to do it. And that was the best marketing. You had people come and put tires on it.
Well, I like to say, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example.
I loved how you went with the city, loved how you, I would say,
well, that's
the city of San Angelo didn't love that because it painted them in a bad light. But they were like, well, if we so I remember talking with Teresa James about it. I said, are we really doing this?
And she's no longer here, right?
No.
Thank God.
John.
Oh, sorry.
Anyway, I like Teresa. I like John. All right. So long story short, we don't agree on that.
I disagree, but we can. That's why we're here.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Politics at the bar.
So I asked. I said, "Does he really have to get that on?" They're like, "Yeah, because if you don't make him do it, everybody else that has one of these food trucks will go, we didn't make Tim do it."
Well, so
and it kind of boiled down to you got to be fair and consistent. Like it or not, you got to be fair and consistent. Was it the most brilliant thing to do to force that to happen? No. Was it great for you? I thought it was some of the best marketing you ever
we make
did.
everything great because we take anything around us and put our passion through it, right?
You did.
And so that's kind of what that is.
You did.
But I guess that actually brings up a good point. I wasn't actually expecting to talk about that, but that's a good point because it's a good example of where my political philosophies fall at the state, at the local level. And then, of course, it works its way all the way up federally. But, that's a perfect example of the government having, in my opinion, now, of course, this is all my opinion, but the government having too much control and getting their hands in the weeds too much. I'm a firm believer of things like the city enforcing ordinances related to how tall your grass is. To me, I think it's like a waste of a total waste of resources because that's
true until you've got a real nice house and the dude beside you never mows his yard.
Well, true, but that can be handled at the human level, not necessarily at the government level.
No, it can't. I had to take care of some property for a person, and I sold it, and there was a lien for $364 on mowing. I had no idea.
So would you consider yourself a big government guy?
No.
Yeah.
No. Who was running for president? He said, you should not even know government exists.
Okay, so I challenge you. This is a good conversation.
Right.
So put your Elon Musk Doge hat on.
Okay.
What are the areas of the city where you just want to take the chainsaw to? Because I could tell you right now, I could answer that question. I think most of the permitting needs to get a chainsaw to it. Most of a lot of the code enforcement related things. Certain things related to sidewalks is a great example. Now, I understand the reason for sidewalks, but we're not at that level of development where, that's like the green spaces. You hear the people talking about all these layers. Now, I don't know if that's a local city ordinance or if it's a state thing or whatever, which I don't think it matters.
So do you know about the Safer Streets grant? We got $18 million last year.
I've heard about it, but I don't know much about it.
It's nearly 40 miles worth of sidewalk funding.
Okay.
All right. It's said here. That is already here. We had to match it with $5 million, but we have $23 million in the Safer Streets to do sidewalks things. So it takes the financial burden off that, but it has to go as it fits. Yeah. And it's going to go up Chadron and all this way. But if you listen to home builders, and so you go talk to realtors.
But that's not local money, though.
Right. But I
That's
mean, no,
state
5
or
million of
federal
that
money.
was 5 million of
Okay.
that was, but no, it's federal, so it'll have to be bid out to the cheapest, person that does concrete. But what that was a good combination of funds. A lot of what was done here downtown was all through grant money and grant applications. So you budget conservatively, so you have the funds when you need to go through that. So let's go back to what you're talking about. If you could just doze it
Yeah,
off.
we want to
You
hear
just
the
want,
Elon Musk chainsaw.
there are
Like
people running for local offices. I'm going to doze this. And
yeah,
doze
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'm like, no, you're not.
Well,
you don't understand that.
One
But you
thing
will.
before you answer that, one thing I know about you is you really have especially from what I've seen through the debates, because I've watched most of the debates you guys have had. You have a very comprehensive understanding, a very clear understanding of how most of the
Thank
government
you.
works. For the most
I
part,
don't, but thank you.
well,
If I came across
it's
that way, thank you.
it's a complicated thing, but you do know a decent amount about.
Right.
About where some of the stuff goes and
what?
where the money, because you got to follow the money, right?
You got to
follow the money.
You nailed it. You go down and look at it and go, okay, are we collecting our sales tax revenue right? I will tell you one thing. I will compliment Brenda. Brenda goes through an Excel spreadsheet and she follows what our sales tax revenue is, what our property tax revenue, our hot tax revenue. Is it all staying pace with last year, the year before? What has worked wonders for Angelo is our budget will be last year less 5. Whatever last year's actual, less 5%. Most conservative. That I've watched other cities right now that are like going,
match it.
Oh, we're broke, and they're cutting funds they obligated to nonprofits and saying we can't pay that. We've never had to do that in our term the past 8 years, which I love being conservative. So,
well, where are we going to cut the expense then? I guess where's the chainsaw? Like, because for me, I would rather have less city services and pay, and not have a tax increase, because a lot of the city services, some of them I feel are important, and some of them are economic related, where you get better, you get things and they come back in returns, right?
Right.
But like, where would you take the chainsaw?
So we've had the chainsaw given to us and had huge amounts of monies taken away.
When you say us, who are you?
The city. Okay, so let me call that city. So there was a vote on a ballot, and it took Johnson & Johnson's property off of the property tax.
I saw y'all talking about that.
That cost us hundreds
of
thousands.
And that was a federal law?
Well, no, it was a state deal, and we voted it in, and I couldn't believe they did. And I was like, there's been properties, all nonprofits take money out of their property tax.
And that's because they make PPE or some reason why.
Absolutely. Whatever the reason a nonprofit has.
So no Shannon revenue, no Ethicon revenue, no Goodfellow revenue, no ASU revenue.
Absolutely.
Where do we make it up? I guess it's
so let me ask you this:
restaurants,
who pays the most taxes in the city of San Angelo?
Well, it's definitely not the commercial. It's probably the residents.
AEP.
AEP.
AEP takes taxes on every. When you go look at the budget,
meaning like on all
those utility easements, everything you see.
Okay.
They pay the most taxes out of it. Nobody even knows it or gives them credit. We need to be telling them thank you for paying more property tax revenue than anybody. All right. But then you just talked about the largest employers, really. If you take Goodfellow, the county, the city, ASU, you take all of those things, basic nonprofits, they have a huge footprint here in San Angelo. Our tax base is too narrow and too thin, or too high. You want it broad and thin. So let's go back to the original thing. If we have been handed shortfalls, nearly every year there's something that'll come in and say, you lost this many $100,000 in revenue. We had a miscommunication between us and the appraisal district, and we didn't calculate in the exemptions for all the people that had their taxes froze. That was nearly $1 million that we had thought we were going to get, but we learned later we weren't going to get. You can't scream and throw a fit. It was just, they were like, well, you need to calculate that. And we're like, no, you need to calculate that before you give it to us. So we went through it. We found a way to survive and not go back and not raise our taxes.
But aren't there actual departments that we can do away with? Like, what about the food truck enforcement arm of the city of San Angelo, Texas?
So,
like, what is the purpose for? And not to go back to that sore subject, right?
No, I think that's great. I think that's cool.
With all fairness, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You were on my side on city council for not having the 17 new ordinances. 17 or 13 new ordinances, which left a very sore, feel in my mouth for everyone else who voted. But I believe you were the only one, and I believe Joe Hyde said something like you were the last conservative on the.
Well,
I remember that was the headline or something.
But you know what? Also, there was a battle over the chamber contract. All right.
Yeah.
And
I was the clawback. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it was how long it should be.
Oh, okay.
And everybody was saying they needed a 1 year, and I'm like, no. I mean, they need at least a 2 year. And there was difference, but I was the only one that voted for 1 year's too short. You need to give them 2 years because economic development and chamber, they're negotiating with people over 2, 3, 4 years. They're in it for the long game. I mean, the short term gain has nothing to do with the long-term objective of bringing in companies or things that will get us long-term money. I mean, you want input, you'd love to have what I call mailbox money.
Yeah,
we got some things coming that are in the oven,
yeah,
and they're almost, ready to domino. And when those come in, it will change the face of Angelo. It will change the face of Angelo as far as revenue. So
I guess going back to the chainsaw thing, we got to get, because right now you're sounding like you're an anti-Doge guy. You're not telling me anywhere you can cut. Like where are we going to cut instead of like wanting to raise taxes?
Nobody's overstaffed. All right.
Nobody's overstaffed.
Nobody's overstaffed. If you look at the number of people we have,
so that means there's got to be departments that can be eliminated.
There are PD and fire department are 10, 12, 15 guys short, whatever it is. So what they're doing is working overtime, and you're financing their overtime pay through vacancies. All right. So if you're supposed to have 10 and you've only got 7, that overtime is coming out of those 3 people's salary that you're banking. We do so much of that to pay our staff. All right. Compared to other cities, we aren't even close. So I hear my opponents talk a lot about, well, I'm going to throw money here, money there. Like, no, you're not. The budget's done. The budget will start again October 1st.
Yeah.
So you can't throw money at this. You have been given your handcuffs. You make your budget once a year, and that's what you work out of. All right. So if you want to cut some areas, where are you going to cut? So here's one that, and this is, I can't even believe I'm going to bring this one up. This one will just.
Got to tell me, because right now I'm hearing big government guy still.
So animal shelter.
Okay.
All right. It has been, animal control is huge right now. And so there's lots of issues about what's going on with the animal shelter. Well, it's a $1.4 million budget every year is what you spend out there. Doesn't provide you basically 80, 90,000 in revenue. It's a lot of money to take care of, but that's public safety. All right. I mean, it's literally public safety, taking care of this. Then you have to see how you manage it. This year, we've added more funds to it. We're going to spend nearly $3.5 million at the animal shelter this year. That is 6 times what we spend for family services. So what's your balance? I mean, should we be spending this over here to worry about all of this and neglecting family services? I'm like, if you really want to look at who you can help with housing, urban development, and new, basically housing programs for first-time buyers, which we work through HUD. You go on our website and see some of these things. Where do you draw the line? Well, it's usually, the most loud person is going to get the most attention.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sit there and say, I don't think our government's as big as you're pushing it, but you're libertarian. And
it's too big for me. I think it's too big for most taxpayers. I don't think you could convince any taxpayer, honestly, in San Angelo, Texas, that the city of San Angelo's government.
So tell me where you would cut. Tell me where you cut, and I'll give you my opinion.
I think from the whole permitting and planning perspective, I think, there's definitely a need to plan, but I think there's so much. Like, I bet you could cut 50% of the things that they do that are not necessary. For instance, all the structural stuff in here are totally necessary. You don't want the roof coming down, but what I think is amazing is that every business owner is incentivized not to have their roof come down. So when you're building an asset, I don't particularly own this building, but the building I own in Taylor County, I do.
Right.
And when I'm building something, I'm building it with the most integrity because I'm incentivized to do that. The whole idea that the government comes and spends 6 to 7 hours of time for one inspector throughout the course of construction, of course.
Right.
They're not here all to come and check and do X, Y, and Z. Like, seems a slightly unnecessary, but even like health-related things, like the health department, for instance, right? Like the health department comes in here and checks, and recently we've gotten 100 every time, and for I think 8 years in a row, we got hundreds every time. But they hired one new health inspector recently,
I've heard about
and you've probably heard all about it.
I've got many phone calls.
Okay, and I'll say this because I don't care.
It doesn't. You're not running for office.
We're not thinking like the business owners think. When you come over here and you're like in the bathroom looking for fingerprints on the wall, or you're like there's no context to that.
You're like, check that box, really fingerprints on the wall.
Yeah, exactly. Is then we do things proper. Like I'm a by the book kind of guy. We label things. I mean, I'm a French trained chef. We do things. My pride is I want to be able to lick the floor. That's how
French
clean.
Trained in Omaha, Nebraska.
Exactly, Omaha. By the way, I got a story to tell you about the embassy here in a minute. But
I love that hotel.
Great hotel, by the way.
It's awesome.
But like like certain things like that. Certain things like I agree. I think maybe privatizing out to all the nonprofits for all of
so let's go back to your health department. Wouldn't it make sense if he went, okay, you've got this pool of restaurants in town, businesses, commercial, whatever, inspections. If this top 20% always scores a 90 or above, why don't we inspect them once every half as much?
Yeah.
Why don't you?
Well, I fully believe in health inspections.
Right. We do, but I wouldn't come inspect you every week or every month knowing that you're going to be a 99 every time.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's inefficient. All right. If you have somebody that's always borderline or on the cusp, focus there, but say, this is what we expect. You can't just come in and say, I'm writing you up for this. Well, I've got calls and people say, I didn't know he expected us to keep a room in a storage room, a dust line off top of a storage shed. I mean, a cabinet in the back that we never even go into had a line of dust. I'm like, oh my gosh.
And I think the broader perspective I have, kind of going back to that whole libertarian perspective, I guess you would call it, is that now I fully, just to take this as an example, I fully believe that there should be a health department that investigates things. I think there should be preventative for the public.
Yeah, you want to have
there's definitely a need for it.
Yeah.
But the question is what is that need and how much is it spent and how is it spent? Going back to the animal control issue, there's 5 or 6 nonprofits that their heart and soul is in this stuff. Is that something that might need to be privatized so that we can, so on and so forth?
So let's finish that, and then we can slide that one away and not have to go back to it.
Okay.
So there's an advisory group that's been put together. Judge Gilbert, Alan Gilbert, is in charge of that. They're going to bring suggestions the first meeting in May.
Yeah.
All right. We've looked at it. Here's what that has always been one of our talks is, do you privatize it? But when you privatize it, you lose all control.
Yeah.
And I think there's some people that have seen when you lose all control of your animal shelter, you don't have input. If you don't have input, you don't have buy-in.
Yeah.
I try to tell people like the parks ordinance. All right. I'm like, when they were talking to builders and realtors about that, I'm like, so have you got input from the builders and realtors on this park ordinance? Well, no. So Aaron went out and had a meeting.
Yeah.
The numbers he had versus what they had were so different. But to get buy-in, you need to have input, and everybody needs to agree. And I don't say they need to agree, but they need to go, okay, this makes sense, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So those are 2 low-hanging fruit in my mind, just because.
So we'll go back to permits, but I wanted to say on the animal shelter, we're going to get a lot of suggestions. We have a third-party cause that comes in and they provide manpower too. I mean, it's part of a bid they do in a contract.
Yeah.
They actually help rehome all these pets. A lot of people don't understand it, but there's always been some posturing in between that of not everybody's going to get along, and I would do it this way and they do it that way, and this person's evil and that, and you just want to go, we're all here for the intent of finding pets. Nobody wants to euthanize pets. I grew up in a vet clinic. I mean, I'm a cat guy. And everybody's like, really, you're a cat guy? I'm a cat guy. I got a Labrador, but I got 2 cats. All right, I'm a cat guy. So
that could get you some votes.
Absolutely. I'm a crazy cat guy. I'm a crazy cat guy. But we all love pets. I mean, it's what it is, but it's a hard thing. And those solutions will never be simple, never be easy. So that's my stance on the animal shelter. We're spending $3.5 million on it this year versus I'm good.
Well, those seem to be smaller departments. What takes up the majority of the budget? Obviously, public safety is the big one, which, that's its own kind of beast.
Right.
You can't really mess with that too much.
I mean, $58 million of a $98 million. So
besides public safety, what else are the big ticket items that?
So let's go to permits. Let's not leave permits. I don't want to leave.
I don't know what percentage permits departments are to the major, to the general fund or anything.
Not enough to say it's a profit model.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, you do, but. So we have a GIS system. If you can go online and you can literally see.
Great, by the way. Very, very easy to navigate.
So that's part of permits. All right. Those people, that's the same people that use that and work that.
Yeah.
So we've got over 40 million of commercial permits on the books ready for development right now. Permits are running probably 8 to 12% higher in growth than what they were last year. We've had a couple of them that have been out on maternity leave. So we've outgrown the permit department. So what we're trying to do is hire the right people come there. We just hired Mr. Mayberry. And when you have inspectors, all right, this is always a topic every election. It's the easiest thing to get people mad about it and incite violence and uproar is permits. It happens every election, every 2 years.
People get riled up.
Oh yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to stab them. We hate it. I was like, no, those are my friends and they're in there working. But
I'm a victim of the permits department too. Sometimes
I get it. But what I say is never judge, man, until you've walked in his shoes. You've been in there. I've sat in the permit department in line to get things that are, and I've watched people came in there that, were not bilingual, all right? And they were Hispanic and they were trying to build just a carport or a barn. And we had to get people to help them. And people went out of the way, but they still left there confused.
Yeah.
We have to build a better way of making it work. So I think it's the biggest hot button. And, if I get in there, May 20th is the first one, and just go, okay, folks, we need a plan to make this smoother. I realize we're behind. So next year's budget, you give me 2 or 3 different budgets. One that works this way. One, if you could go get 2 or 3 more people, and where would you put them? All right. So we put in a tracking system, and I wish we could make it public. I so wish we could make it. So when you come in on a commercial development, you have 21 days. You come in till you get your inspections, and we're supposed to have all your information for you.
Yeah.
But some people don't know what questions to ask. My mother-in-law came in. She built a little barn or a shed at her house, and it was easy. But I think she had to make like 6 or 7 trips to permit. So I asked her when it was done, I said, if you knew all the questions asked, what could you do it the next time? She goes, I could do it in 2 or 3.
Yeah.
No one will. So there's a lot of education there.
There's a learning curve to all that.
It's huge to that. So I want to, we're now hiring inspectors that are also knowledgeable, not only in plumbing, but in electrical. I mean, you've got to put the right skills.
Cross-trained, right?
Cross-trained. But that costs money. So when I pick up the phone and people call me, I'm like, be specific. I will say that half of the phone calls I get, it's the contractor or the construction people that are blaming the city. And we're like, no, we're waiting on this. It's 50% of the time. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
But it's easy to throw permits under the bus.
Oh, yeah.
They need more people. They need more manpower. I'm saying yours is just the opposite. I think if you got rid of all of them, you would lose some very talented people that are pretty sharp at what they do.
Well,
but you got to get enough.
So you're justifying all of those departments, I guess, from the current spending levels. But like, there's got to be something you want to cut, right? Because I'm trying to set it on a. Okay. I don't know what besides. I mean, I don't think it's smart to cut public safety. So fire department,
you don't want to
police department.
So if you did, somebody would come say, so tasers.
Yeah.
The PD wanted these new tasers.
Yeah.
And I never understood if it was a 10-shot taser, or if it was 5 shots of 2, or 2 shots of 5, or whatever. And if you didn't do it, you would basically be defunding PD.
Yeah.
But that wasn't our wheelhouse. All right. Chief is elected. All right. It's him to bring that forward. He's like, we need these. So I'm talking to some PD at the rodeo, and I'm like, did you really need those tasers? Oh, yeah.
There's got to be something, though, that you can that is on your list.
Tell me.
I don't know. You're telling me you're the one running for mayor. I would defund the whole city government if I could. I'd fire Daniel Valenzuela. I'd fire everybody up at City Hall. I would say we don't need you guys. We'll just deal with state stuff and federal stuff. Like, for instance, on the health department stuff, there's a Texas TFER. But then you look at that, it's 300 and something pages. But then there's another 16 pages of city ordinances. So every level of government gives more regulation. I'm an anti-regulation kind of guy. I would defund the whole thing. But you're running for mayor. I'm just curious. That's my big thing.
Protection. So permits.
Because I'm going to have a conversation with Trinidad and Gary too, and they're all about no more taxes, no more taxes. So on and so. But my question is all right. Well, then
we have nothing to do with too.
I mean, and you're not necessarily saying no more. You're just trying to keep it where it's status quo.
We stay within our budget.
I mean, we have inflation and so on and so forth. So you're saying and just trying to maintain taxes, but you're not saying change the spending. Well, these guys are all saying no more taxes, even less taxes. I'm assuming they have answers on what they want to cut.
I mean, it's what they don't.
There's no cuts. There's no cuts at all.
So you can't stand there and say no more taxes, or I'm going to lower your taxes. I'm like, I don't know how you do that, because that's not your call. Staff is going to bring you a proposal for a budget. You're one of 7 votes. They're going to come through and say, here is the budget. Here's what we need to pay the bills. Here's what we need, even with vacancies. Chief Brody and Chief Griffith's going to come in and say, here's what we are. We've been understaffed by 15 or 20. We need this. What do you cut to do that? I mean, you're not going to cut the animal shelter. You're not going to cut neighborhood and family services. So let's look at things you do provide. Trash. Do you want to totally privatize trash? Would you privatize the dump ground?
I like that.
So would you do that? Would you privatize the landfill and say, I could sell the landfill and I could get X amount of money to the city and we wouldn't have to pay for that?
I think those are vital services. So I think that, that's just a wash as an expense to live. Okay. But I think where it's all this, it's all like how many going back to the whole permits thing, how many inspectors are employed in San Angelo?
Oh my God.
Do you know? I mean,
I can't give you a right answer on that.
Like 10, 20?
Oh, I think you're going to be in the teens, but there's, you've got
CSI for
20,
water. Whatever.
So and I mean, you have construction.
They have less to enforce, you could cut that by half.
Right.
No, just taking big picture chunks, Elon Musk, chainsaw stuff. So in theory, if you had them enforce 50% of the regulations they're currently enforcing, in theory, you could cut that by half.
So if I put a stamp on it and said, you know what, Tim, you can move into this house. We've come by and done this inspection on it. And you know what? The plumbing bust. Well, you were supposed to inspect that. The electrical wasn't right.
Well, yeah, but that's all a private homeowner's
No. The city has to come through and mark an inspection. I have a friend, and she is having a problem with the developer right now, or a builder. And her house, while it got a stamp of approval, it was good at the time. And over when she first moved into it, she's had lots of problems. And she's like, well, y'all stamped it. Well, we stamped it at that time, and it took expertise to look at that part of it. But you never get the full inspection, or you don't inspect every outlet, everything. You don't inspect the foundation. There's a cores, that concrete. So where do you go?
But why would the city inspect a private home? Private residence.
Yeah,
but why though?
Isn't that up to code?
Okay, well, which is
got to be up to code.
True. Well, like up to code as far as what, like electrical, plumbing, and so on and so forth. Plumbing.
But here's one: we are like insulation. We're like an R something or another. California codes are by far much more stringent than what we have in Texas, and we have fought those. We're like, we don't need to go to that level, but insurance companies will drive that. They'll say, if you're not insulated with this code, with this year of manufacture or development, we may not insure you. So we at least have to stay in line.
Well, true, but I guess some question where that line is. And for me, I would say, my line's over here. You might say
your
over here, right?
Dude, I got insulation in. Just let it roll.
But where I go back to that whole philosophy, though, and kind of that political viewpoint, is that, okay, you're buying a home. It's your obligation as the homeowner to make sure you're buying a home that you want to buy. Right. And so you're going to hire an inspector to come in and inspect and appraise the home, look at everything. You're going to hire somebody in the private industry to do that. Right. What is why is there even a need for the city employees to come in and inspect your home as well? Now, of course, that's just buying a home, but like, I understand if it's like been, not lived in for 10 years and condemned, then that would be a reason, but that's not that large a percentage.
There are set standards that we're responsible for within the city limits. There's certain electrical, plumbing, waste, sewage, infrastructure the city is responsible for. If I was a underwriter for an insurance company and you had a house in Condonville, all right, Tim Condonville, and you know what? They didn't get half the inspections. They kind of just went on their own. I might not insure that. I'm like going, did somebody really check that? Did somebody really? I mean, and if you take that, say you built that in the ETJ, which the city has some control over permitting and planning in the ETJ. When those move into the city limits, you want to make sure that that septic and sewage system is compatible with what the city has. If they built it and totally didn't build it up to code or spec, then somebody's going to be annexed in. They're going to buy a house from Tim and like go, no, your septic isn't up to code. It's not deep enough. It's contaminating down the road.
Yeah.
So there's reasons for that there.
Well, and I agree with all those reasons. I think you're pointing out a few obvious reasons on why, but that would be the 50% that stays in regulate. What I'm saying is there's got to be 50%.
Dude, I don't.
And I know we're going down the rabbit hole on just this topic, but there's got to be other parts of the city where instead of raising taxes, we can figure out ways to cut.
Right.
but I don't hear that much. But I'm just trying to form my opinion.
No, but I mean, so
You know me.
on permits. I mean, we're understaffed in permits. We're not keeping up with the development. There's 40 million in commercial permits that's ready to go,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's going to come in the future. They're just in the process. So it's easy to throw the bus at them and run over them all that, and it's a hot button. So they need. I wish they could make every permit application public. So if Tim Condon went in and filed and said, I have this apartment in this house, and I'm filing for this, and I have this inspection timeline.
The values are public, I guess.
Yeah, the values are public, but I would love to see the inspection status. You know what? I'm watching. They actually put in the system, and if you get past the 7 or the 21 days, it's in the red. All right, it throws up a flag. This property has not gotten done as we've committed to. Now, is it the contractor, the builder? Is it the owner? Or is it the city's fault? Well, what's in the red, somebody needs to come up with a solution to it. But the city has that in there. And I mean, they literally go through and go, do we have anybody in the red? So now it's down to the complication of, can I shorten? Roy Zesh was great. He told me, I was talking to him, San Angelo Association of Realtors president. And I talked to him about permits. He said, every time we have to go down there, it costs money. Don't make me go 7, 8, 9 times. Make it to where I can come down there. Give me a sheet of paper. Let me come in and out 2 or 3 times and be done. And he's right. We need to make that more efficient.
It is getting a little bit more efficient, but I mean, just anecdotally, the city seems to be a much harder, especially San Angelo, seems to be a much harder business or a business friendly community
so compare us to Abilene.
Than Abilene.
Compare us to Abilene.
Yeah, no.
So is Abilene was less than, Abilene?
Yeah, Abilene was less than a 5-minute phone call with the only problem on the permit problem.
Sweet.
And here was like, well, as you know, 6 months of just figuring out how to get the green sign. And no, that's a beautiful.
Okay, hang on. That was great. You're going to have to
another perfect, beautiful topic about where to cut the government. Oh, I can't believe I forgot my favorite topic.
I've been waiting for this for a while. Here it comes.
So beautiful. So part of the reason why I am who I am as a business owner, and the why I choose to go up certain tree trunks or not, right? It is based anecdotally on my experience as a business owner. And so that goes back to the good old boy system where, like, you know, everyone says that there's certain
not leave
people
that. Let's wrap it up with good old boy, but we're not there yet, but let's not forget it either.
Okay. So there, you know, everyone says there's this, you know, and I think all cities of our size, whether it be Abilene, whether it be Midland, Odessa,
Wichita Falls,
you know what I mean? We all have this. We're too small for our own good, but not big enough for, like, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but basically, you know, there's a lot of politics and personal relationships involved in the city. And so, you know, you always have a little bit of tribalness that happens in that way, right?
I agree.
But with the whole Angry Cactus thing, you know, that's a perfect example
of. So you need to tell them what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's
so let me go back to 2014.
Okay.
So in order to build the Angry Cactus, to make this vision happen, I'm very particular in certain details. And one of the things I really wanted to do is make this a landmark location, which we eventually did.
You did.
And my whole goal was to put, I didn't know at the time, but they asked me to, like, come up with my vision. Of course, as a visionary, you don't want to make certain decisions because you don't necessarily have it all figured out in your head.
It's a little risky. That's why you put smart people in a room and let that answer come and go, okay.
Exactly.
I get it.
So my whole idea was to put this giant green cactus up. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't know how it was going to be.
Where did that come from?
So originally I was going to do real cactus and a bunch of big giant cactus and all this kind of stuff. And it was going to be
I fell in cactus from the time I was 2 till I was 20.
And I can give you the story because that's actually a good story to kind of end on.
We may not have that much time, but it's a cool one.
Yeah, we'll finish up here in a minute. But
I can go for another hour. I can go forever.
So there was this controversy on how tall the cactus should be and whether it should be this tall, that tall, how the smile should look, what colors, so on and so forth. And as somebody who's a little bit minorly antagonistic, I thought to myself, you know, we didn't really have our plans together yet. And so we were just kind of teasing. And I walked into the meeting and I said I wanted like a 600-foot cactus, and everyone, you know, and of course, it sparked controversy, right?
Oh yeah.
But really, the bigger point was going through the experience of DHRC. I fully understand that there's certain forces at play that are important to keep downtown San Angelo what it is and grow it in the future. You know, it started off way back in the day with Blaine and then Rob at Sealy Flats, and you had, originally the Dead Horse. I mean, you got I know the whole history of downtown, even though I got here in 2010. 5-10 years before that, people were starting to kind of come down here for the first time and so on. And then, of course, Angry Cactus and Twisted Root opened in 2016. So it's been, we're going on 8 years already, 9 years almost.
Very successful, great years.
Long story short is, anecdotally, as a business owner, you got to go through all these hoops. But the problem is everyone's opinions aren't necessarily synced with the law.
Yes.
Right. And so it creates this friction between people who are trying to get things done in the real world and people who have their opinions that are clouding progress. And that has a lot of resistance politically and kind of like who's involved.
Well, so you say clouding progress. Is it that, or they just want progress to follow a specific path?
Yeah, and my vision of progress and someone else's vision of progress is obviously completely different.
Right.
There's no restaurants like Angry Cactus in downtown. Everything looks different here.
You're unique.
It's a unique experience, right? Long story short, like those are the kind of things. Like, what's the point? What's the point in DHRC when you have nonprofits that can kind of come in and are NGOs basically like downtown, and they're really playing the role of the government, but they're really a nonprofit organization that's a non-government organization that is run by the same people in the government, and they're the ones sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes causing the holdups and causing the...
No, there's no argument with you. I mean, you are absolutely correct on what you say, but you also have to protect. I'll take Brenda's stance on this a little bit. Is you have to protect what you have, just so you don't have something. I mean, there was a big cultural overlay deal at council this past week, and that was all about protection of what can come in and happen versus what can. And what they're not saying there's not a place for some of those things that people want to bring. It's just, you want to put them in your historic downtown district. I've got more phone calls over, hey, I'm in this cultural overlay and I want to put up a white fence, but I can't put up I can't put up this color fence.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did you see the colors? No. Look, can you do a taupe color or an off? Yeah, I can do that. Okay. And I mean, those things you can solve. But you're right. There's a lot of restriction to that. Where do you draw the line? I think where you're going.
I know where I would go. I think it's completely unnecessary because communities are built by individuals, not by the individuals with the most power.
Right.
And so, where your money is what speaks. And so, as you do, like for me here, I opened this business with very little in my pocket. And now have a lot more to be able to invest and build another restaurant and so on. And so
that invested in you because you were a good old boy. You were a potential. I mean, whatever. So that's a label, all right?
I wouldn't say good old boy because I'm the anti-good old boy.
No, I think you are. I think you're a good person. You do good business. You made a successful business. No, I'd call you a good old boy. I mean, if somebody said, I'd go, no, he's a good old boy. He's successful, and he's done what he needs to do. And you made it work in the face of a lot of things that were they weren't normal, all right? They weren't the norm. And it's like, that's getting outside of my box.
Yeah.
And it was the big green cactus.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's just one of 4 issues. The Costa DC thing.
Sure.
The COVID situation with the parking thing down here.
I get it.
And then, of course, my sore subject, the food truck ordinance. Oh, my God. Our government, our local government is getting out of control.
But you had no problem. But that's just you had no problem with food trucks being all outside your business.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
You would line them all up, let them come through here.
Well, because I'm the ultimate capitalist. So I believe in competition cures all.
Right.
The reason why we're the most successful.
I couldn't believe it when you told me that. You were like, I came in here to eat just hoping I would catch you. And it's kind of like you have to ask questions. When whatever position you're in, you have to ask, okay, why is this way? You have to get input from somebody other than
if I had a hot dog truck parked right outside, of course I'm not going to let their customers come in and eat. But
if you have a public restroom, they have to.
Well, but true, but that would just be assuming I was their commissary.
Right.
But if they're just parked out front and they're serving hot dogs to people walking by, there's no air conditioning outside. I mean, it's 100 and something degrees, right? So, I've got all the advantage.
You know how unique you are to do that and be for that.
No, I think it's a generational thing.
Guy Ferreri's new, his channel on Food Network. It's, hey, I brought all these people in to create a food park of food trucks. And I'm like going, that is awesome. You know, you're bringing in competition to make the whole, you know, it's that kind of the
camaraderie is what I like to use.
Rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah.
I get it. And that is your model, and that's your motto. I don't know how many people understand that.
Well, but it's a business truth. A lot of people don't understand it because they're not educated as an entrepreneur.
Very few people say, if you get everybody this and we all do better, everybody's better.
Well, it's exactly why I'm buying into Abilene, because I see the camaraderie of the soda district and all of that, right?
They would love it.
I saw down here, you know, there was nobody down here, but I knew that there was 3 businesses going in that were going to be here for a while.
You and Lori compliment each other.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We sell cheeseburgers, but we both have independent businesses. And so, like, I believe in that philosophy, you know, because I think it's a business truth, right. You know. But no, I was just curious kind of where you fell on that broader topic. But
that's protection. And so we go back to permits and planning. You know, planning is, when is a short-term solution not in compliance with our long-term objective? You know, you want to grow something to the southwest. You want to go. So don't let the quick, easy fix or the quick, easy, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. No, in the long term, you've got to see further than your skis. I mean, you've got to see vision further than what everybody else. And you did that. You knew that this would work here. There's people. I mean, we're going to have that Sitel Tower, that whole system over there. We're going to have like a little technology tower. Yeah. The airport. I'm huge on the airport. All right. I think we'll get it. We'll try to get a parallel runway. Look what ASU did. All right. That flight program, they just put in an air traffic control program. Well, there's a huge shortage for that. They strategically picked a way to put ASU in the forefront of college education and aviation for years to come. I don't know Hawkins very well. I think the dude's brilliant. I mean, he's been able to position them, but it just didn't start with him. There were people along the way that guided it. And if you it's a relay race, and everybody's tired of me saying this, but I'm like, don't Monday morning quarterback. You take the baton and you get it to the next guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But you make it as good as you can. And the successes of lots of things we have today were because of people way behind us. Some things in the next 4 and 8 years are going to be because of what this council put in place. And I want the next council to be able to say the same thing and go on. You did. I mean, you helped create a corridor here of great food. I mean, I get it.
So I got one final question, because I know we've been talking for a minute, but this is my favorite question to ask anyone. So this has nothing political to do with anything.
Did we skip the good old boys?
We can talk about it a few more minutes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, so I can say, okay, so my definition of good old boys and the good old boy club is, I think when people use that here in San Angelo, they're talking about the old timers that have run San Angelo forever, politically, influentially, you know, economically. You know, and so there's different clans, right? Of the good old boys. You got this clan over here, that clan over there.
It kind of depends what Joe Hyde calls them on San Angelo Live. You know, I never knew this group of Santa Rita was the good old boys until Joe labeled them the good old boys one time.
You know what Lee Pfluger's nickname is? The Principal.
The Principal.
But that was given by Joe Hyde.
Well, but I mean, Lee has a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience.
Oh, yeah.
Lee donated to my campaign. He's like, here it is. And he and I have, what's cool about that is, me and Lee have not agreed on many topics. All right.
Yeah.
We have not agreed, but he's like, okay. But that didn't stop him from saying, I'm with you. Here's some support.
Yeah.
And here's support funds, because I think your long-term objective and knowledge and experience is worth it.
Well, the Angry Cactus wouldn't be here with Lee's help. I mean, like, Lee was the one who helped build this. This is Lee's building, so he built this for me. You know, what a great guy. I mean, like, I have nothing.
So, good old boy or not good old boy?
But so when I use the word good old boy, I'm using it in as a definition of, he's definitely a good old boy. But like my good old boy, though. You know what I mean? Like, so it depends on who.
But people have positioned that as sinister.
Yeah.
He's out, and he's just one of the, when they brought that up at a debate the other night, hey, Thompson's one, my opponents were licking their chops and they were rubbing their hands together. And I'm like, I was really upset when they did that, because I thought, you can't help that label. If people call you because you take care of them and help them, I interviewed with the same people everybody else did.
Yeah.
You know, this is the people that, you know, I got endorsements from the police department, the fire department. They called me up and said, here it is. All right, we take this, build it. And so it kind of hurt my feelings when they said that. I don't want to sound like a little wimp right here, but these are people that built San Angelo. I can't help it how good they are, and everybody else. And a lot of these people have also given money to everybody else too.
Yeah, yeah.
But because they gave it to me, I was a good old boy. And I thought, well, that's probably the worst thing I've ever heard say.
Well, I think
about really good people.
I really think what they use though as the definition as it's used, the way I understand it in the context of the people that live here in San Angelo, it's the establishment.
Right.
They're saying the establishment, and so when they're referring to you as the good old boy, I think what they're a good old boy. I think what they're saying is you've been part of city council for this long, you've been part of the community in that leadership role, so you're part of the establishment, which makes you part of the good old boy system. And I think that's where and not to be a good old boy would be an outsider, right?
Because they think I'm afraid to get out of my box and look at something different. I never knew where somebody wanted to go with that, and I was like. So I left that meeting. I was like going, those.
Well, I know what people feel. I think.
Yeah.
I think it's that people feel like when they put a candidate with your level of experience, that it's going to be the same old, same old. It's not going to be the Elon Musk chainsaw moment that they go down and
That's what some people might
City
think.
Hall.
That's what some people might.
It's hard to do. Not everyone's an Elon Musk that can go in there and accurately and surgically cut the government with and a lot of that's technical in nature. It's computer systems that he's dealing with, which is very easy to make efficient if you know what you're doing.
Right.
But the bigger question is service related. Where do you go cut the government? And I think we had that discussion long enough.
I think the city should always be service related. I was talking to a gentleman today, back in Thornton, and he has some leased property out at the lake that is adjacent to his, and he was talking about, can I graze it, not graze it? No, Michael, it's in the lease. It's in the lease. You can't graze it. Can I take care of it? Yeah, you can take care of it. He's like, okay. And he said, I kind of felt bad when I was asking this. And in the end, he didn't think he got treated very kindly. And I said, you know what? Everybody is a customer, regardless of whether you like them or not. I'm sure people do business with me all the time. They're like going, I can't stand him. But they're nice and polite, and I respect them for that.
Yeah.
I don't care. I've got lots of friends. I'm not good enough friends to the friends I have. I don't get to spend enough time with you. I don't get to spend enough time with Brenda. I don't get to spend with Lori, to people that have been way gracious and good to me. So kind of how that's gone down that path was everybody gets the same opportunity. If you go and you get involved. I mean, the number one step I ever did was get involved in the church. My wife said, we get married, we're going to go to church. We did. And you get involved. And then from people you meet there, it expands. Then I ended up getting a job at the rodeo. All right. I did a lot of work with professors at ASU. I was their sheep shearer. Okay. It wasn't any high, good old boy job I had. I was their sheep shearer, paid for my entire college education. But because you met the right people at the right place at the right time, you got the experience. And you've done that here. So go over your history. Omaha.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Omaha at 18.
What year were you born?
1984. So
okay.
I just turned 40.
Can I get your birthday so I can go get a credit card?
I am 40 years old and I feel old as hell. Yeah, I just turned 40.
I'm 58. Okay.
Born and raised in Omaha. Went to culinary school in Omaha. When I was going to culinary school, it's called Metropolitan Community College, but it's called ICA, the Institute for Culinary Arts.
Was it French? Was it?
Yeah, it was all French-based class. But as a sous chef, I was a sous chef at the Embassy Suites in Omaha, your favorite hotel.
Oh, dude!
During culinary school,
I guarantee you, I ate there while you were cooking. So, define what a sous chef does?
Sous chef is the second chef. So it's basically
it's my turn to ask questions.
Yeah,
right? It's my turn to drill.
The executive chef, and then you've got different levels of sous.
You're the guy that gets everything done.
Here, I have a sous chef, and I have a garmager chef. I have chef de parties. We've got all of it.
Right.
But that's the whole culinary culture that we do here.
Right. So then where did you go?
And
got on the boat.
I got on an airplane.
Got on a boat.
And went to Hawaii. So I was there for 5 years. And then I got landed in San Angelo, Texas, 2010.
So that's how did you get back here?
All Air Force related.
Okay.
So I had my daughter in high school. And her mom and I, we weren't together after high school. So she got married to a guy in the Air Force. And I was like, I'm coming with you guys to Hawaii. And, of course, you can get a great job in Hawaii.
I think we met her here.
Yeah, she's been here many times.
Yes.
And then, of course, my daughter lived here forever.
Yep.
But then, came to San Angelo, Texas, 2010 because he became an instructor here. and I knew it was a perfect town to start a business. So that's when I started Lone Star Cheeseburger.
So how did you get the money to start it?
So I saved up. $3,000, and that was 10% of
Right.
the 30,000 needed.
So who financed you?
First Financial Bank.
Okay.
Oh no, I take that back. Prosperity Bank.
Oh,
Don Johnston back in the day. I don't know if you remember Don Johnston from.
We remember Don.
Craziest part is that's actually when I met Trinidad for the first time, because when I first moved to San Angelo, I had to go. I went. Don wanted me to go get a job,
Right.
and I was like, "Well, I'm going to open a business. I'm going to work for myself because I know you need some sort of
You got to have some.
So I went to be the chef at Verizon for about 3 months or so,
Right.
until I got enough paychecks to satisfy the bank.
Right.
Put my notice in, and then I opened Lone Star Cheeseburger. But that's how I got here. And French trained chef, but really the ultimate goal was to open a restaurant eventually. But I wanted to prove my capableness of running a profitable business in the food industry on my own dollar.
Right.
And then hopefully I could get a bigger loan.
You've achieved that.
We just keep going up from there. So that's kind of like the story of me. But I'm not running for mayor. I do have one more question for you, though.
Okay.
We can wind it up with this because we've been talking for a while.
Dude,
I'm ready for another beer,
I'm hungry.
too. Oh, yeah, we got some prime rib for you, too.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that might alter this conversation. But, okay, say you're not running for mayor now. Things didn't work out in your life quite right. You're behind bars. Right? You're on death row.
So close.
You're on death row right now.
Right.
Right? Tomorrow is not that you're not going to be living anymore. What is your final meal on death row?
Do you know this?
No. But I love that. I love this conversation because it's my favorite question.
I would love to kick your butt in this contest, and I would take you on in a heartbeat. Spaghetti and meatballs.
Okay.
With a marinara sauce.
I can deal with that.
And I grew up, mother made it for me. She would actually make it in a clay pot. And it was, while my dad was a veterinarian, the last, 6-7 years that I lived in Big Spring, we lived in a trailer house. We bought some property and we lived in that. But mother had this clay pot. We'd soak it for 20 minutes. And then she would make meatballs and the red sauce. And she would put it in that clay pot. And it would bake for 2 or 3 hours. All right. Nice. Then she'd do the spaghetti. And I just, to this day.
Did she call it Sunday gravy, the red sauce, or just called it red sauce?
It was just the red sauce. And she had a mix on meatballs, which I've gone my own way with it. But I love spaghetti meatballs. And I will drive all the way across. It's just not the most healthy thing in the world to eat like 16 bushels of spaghetti 8 days in a row. I'd eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Nice.
And it's got to be done right. And you got to have the right wine in your sauce.
Oh, yeah.
In your meatballs, I watch this on the Food Channel. I do sausage and beef, and that's great. And I don't use very many crackers in it. I use lots of eggs. Way too many eggs.
Okay.
And then if you really want to give it that extra touch and not overwork it, you add some water. And I forget who I saw do
add what?
Water.
Oh, water. Okay.
Water to your meatballs.
Yeah.
And then you don't want to overwork them, because if you get that look that looks like cat food. It's
too
just
much.
Some meatloafs are done too much.
I had ice to all my sausage. I put ice through the grinder with it.
That makes total sense. That's brilliant. And so many people don't realize that. And I have this cheap wine, Holland's wine, that I buy at H-E-B, which you wouldn't give to your dogs or cats to drink if you hated them, but makes the best flavor on salt. And then I'll do some, salt, pepper. I put some Worcestershire in it. It tastes a little bit. If I need salt, rather than going salt, I'll use some soy sauce. Just put a touch of soy.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then go with it. And then I throw in some red pepper flakes just to give it a little bit of sting. And I can eat that for days. My wife's like, "You're just not very."
Any Parmesan cheese in your meatballs?
No, I don't put it. Never been a huge Parmesan fan.
Okay.
Oregano.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Not huge on that.
Oregano.
No.
Okay.
You can put it in there, but it's never been a fancy for me.
So what's your dessert on death row?
Spaghetti and meatballs.
Spaghetti and meatballs.
Right. I will founder on spaghetti and meatballs.
All right.
I will do that. So are you happy you're in San Angelo?
Yes.
Are you happy here?
Yeah, I love San Angelo.
I don't want you to leave. I mean, if you're going to Abilene.
Well, this will be my last voting cycle, because my primary I don't know how that works. When you live in two cities, what do you have to do?
You're going to have to declare one.
You're going to
You'll have to
declare
make
one.
your driver's license.
Well, I guess I can go back and forth between who has the bigger issues where I need to vote in.
But it's like competition. Competition makes you better.
Yeah.
Gary and Trinidad's stances and things on that. There's a lot of things we don't agree on. All right. A lot of things I don't think they'll, and everybody that I've seen come in over 8 years, the first thing they say after 2 years is, I had no idea what I didn't know. I had no idea what these people and effort, and a lot of the people, the staff I work with are my friends, and it's cool to be able to pick up the phone and call them. Because I was talking to Shane Kelton tonight, and he was talking about some things. We've got some really cool deal, public announcement, PSA we're going to do next week. That'll be great for the lake and all that, but just kind of a little. But these are my friends, and I've loved Angelo.
Is it the big project that everyone's been talking about for a while that's not official?
No.
Or is this confidential?
No. This one involves water.
Oh, okay.
Out at the lake. Anyway, there's some cool things coming down there, and it's not, I don't think, secret confidential, but projects that have been on the books for a long time are coming to fruition. And I'm just like, that's going to do so much for a pump in the arm. I mean, you have made San Angelo downtown better. Brenda's made it better. Lee Pfluger has made it better. Felton over at the bookstore has made it better. Deja Vu. I mean, we've created an eclectic thing here that we would not be San Angelo if it wasn't for people like you.
Well, I heard a funny thing in Abilene. You know what Abilene's best kept secret is? This is coming from someone that I think is on. Yeah, it was San Angelo is Abilene's best kept secret. That's what I was told.
Well,
because it's an hour down the street, and everyone just loves to come down here. I mean, we get a good solid 5 to 10% of our clientele coming from Abilene.
But you learn, whether you're going to Perini's or you're going to the Shed. I love the Shed over there. They've done business. We're talking about restaurants here. And I fly in and out of Abilene. I'll sit there and I'll watch. I'll stay for an extra 15 minutes and watch their marketing on their baggage claim. They have such a good. So Abilene is competition for us. They would love to have our rodeo. I mean, they would love to say, we've got a facility big enough to handle 10. We would love to have your time frame on the calendar. We'd rather have that rodeo in Abilene than in Angelo.
Yeah.
So those are battles we're not going to go in depth to, but those are concerns that are long-term concerns that we have to protect. You've got to protect your school, got to protect your rodeo, got to protect downtown San Angelo. Those are things that you work a vision further than what people can see. All right, and just stay on it.
Visionaries.
Well,
that's the important part.
I've never claimed to be that, but I say you take what people.
Well, you have to be as a mayor. Oh, you got to look 10, 20, 30 years down the line, 50 years down the line.
It's like signs. I refuse to put a sign out if somebody didn't ask for that sign.
Yeah.
All right, I do. I hate that. And I see so many signs that are illegal and not in the right spot and in easement, and I get calls, hey, and I'm like, it's not me. That's not my name, but you call me. No, I'm not going to call them and tell them, here's their number. You can call. But anyway, long story short, as we're all moving through this, the next mayor, I think the bonds are more important than the next mayor. They need support to go through just to support our city to move forward. I think we're severely handicapped if we don't approve both of those propositions. By far more important than who's mayor. Let's go forward. Let's do great things. Let's be resilient, in our pursuit of water. Let's beat on economic development. The two mics. Go. Beat them, and say, crack the whip. Go find things. Get them in here. Just push them as far as you can. But you have to give them the tools to do that. And we haven't been great at that. And I think we can do better. Stay on your infrastructure. With that all, I can't tell you, what time is it? 8? So we've been beating on this deal for 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Thanks for.
No, dude. So regardless, people need to do this once every 4 months. I mean, once you come in there and talk about controversial things, it creates. People don't know transparency. They don't know where to go on the city website to find all these things. Discussions like this bring out people like, oh, okay, that person's no different than me.
Yeah.
Here's how, and I can go do that. I want kids to get involved. I would love to see a younger group get involved. So you're thinking, okay, that's the person who's going to be here. That will be the next good old boy. I'll just leave it at that.
There you go.
Let's go find the next good old boys and good old gals.
Yeah.
We've got some great people that we're putting on boards, and you have to focus on that. I've got some wonderful people now on the tiers board, so I could ramble forever.
Well, the election day is May 3rd.
May 3rd. We're in early voting right now.
Early voting.
Go vote. Please go vote.
Go vote for
research
whoever you feel.
Research your candidates. Watch this, But what I like to say is look at facts, and what I like to point out is you need to look at facts, not just opinions. Oh, well, this is this. No, it's not that. And if you have question about that, ask for proof. That's what I tell people. But here's what Joe brought up, and Stephen McLaughlin brought up. Used to the Standard Times, when we had a newspaper, they would vet out all of these people. They would look at platforms, stances. Now there's no vetting out what people say.
Yeah.
And it just pains me to see things on Facebook. I'm like,
Well,
that's not right.
Times have changed. So
I know it is. And I'm like,
the
that's
battle
not
politically is different.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it still doesn't give you credibility to go say that. And you know what? History will be good to those that are straightforward and honest and say this is what was actually there.
Yeah,
I think it'll be good. Look, we've said here forever. I'm starving. I'm gonna get something. Thank you for your time.
Oh, absolutely.
Holly, behind the girl. I mean, the girl behind the camera over there, Holly Rose.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you for putting up with us.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and thanks, Tom. Appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
We'll do it again.
All right. Bye.